repeat myself a little bit because the camera wasn't up and going. And today we have done renewing the precepts, which is a ceremony that's traditionally done in China and Vietnam, and I'm sure in other places, but I know in China and Vietnam it's done twice a month on the new moon and the full moon. And Buddhist holidays are all tied in with the lunar dates. And I still haven't caught my breath. I decided a long time ago to go ahead and follow our Gregorian or Western calendar because I grew up in a Japanese temple. And Japan's the only Asian country that follows the Gregorian calendar to the T. It isn't the others aren't aware of it, it's just that the holidays are all on the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar was used in the Buddhist time because nobody had a watch. They hadn't been invented yet. And I'm sure they had some kind of clock, maybe a sundial or something like that, because we're talking 2,600 years ago. So a lot of the events were keyed into when there was a full moon, when there was a new moon. That was easy to tell.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it like astrology, numerology kind of?
No.
Nothing like that?
Nah. No, actually, at least the monks, Buddhism started off as a religious order. And it was technically the first religious order because there was a rule. This was something I talked to the monks a couple of years ago about. They came to visit us here. I'm not sure whether I got through to all of them, but in order to have a religious order, you have to have a religious rule. It's just a definition. And Americans like to go out and start their own orders within Zen, which is another conversation we could have at another time. But when they start these religious orders, they never have a rule. Or if they do, it's so brief that it almost doesn't apply. And what I mean by that is the Japanese have 10 precepts that they give out. Well, they say it's 16, but they're fudging a little bit. But basically, they've taken the 5 precepts, adulterated them, and called them the 10 heart precepts. But there's no rule. In other words, you know, you have to be nice and don't get angry. That's really a nice ideal, but it's not a rule. Well, maybe it is, I don't know. You know, where the monks in every other tradition in the Japanese, they have either 127 rules they follow, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's a lot of rules.
Yeah, it's a lot of rules. And then there's 248, and then the rules we have are 250, and the nuns have another 90 rules, which is another conversation. Some years ago, some people had opened a little meditation center and basically had self-ordained, had declared that they were monks, and one of them declared he was a master, and there was really no lineage involved or anything like that. It was a self-proclamation. And time went by, and one of my students became friends with these people and made a case to me to ordain them, and so that they could be proper monks. Because we have a 2,600-year-old tradition of ordination and rules to follow. And at that time, I talked to them about it, and I thought, well, I had met them, they seemed like nice people. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do this. And of course, I had a hope and an expectation that they might actually follow the rules. What a novel idea, right? Yes, if you want to ordain, these are our rules. And I went over the rules with them and this and that. And one of the things I said to them, because I don't want to go historically, I should just write this history is what I should do. And then you can purchase this for $500, The Secrets of the Desert Zen Center. But there were a number of people that needed validation for what they were doing. And I said, okay, well, we're going to do this. You come study with me. Originally it was you come twice a year and study with me, and I'll help you in any way I can, and your ordination will be real. Now, I told these guys a couple of years ago, I said, anybody can, in America, anybody can start a church. Anybody can self-ordain. If you want to have a church, you can do that.
Oh, no, I don't.
No, but if you wanted to, you could. You could call it Mary's Church of the Holy Rose. And you could apply for nonprofit status. Nobody's going to fight you. We have religious freedom in this country. We're probably the only country in the world that really does have religious freedom. So you can, in this country, you can be anything. You can be a witch. You can be a wizard. You can start a church and say that you're an atheist and call that a church.
Really?
Yes, oh yes. You're allowed. Our government, our Constitution was written in such a way that we cannot touch people that say this is our religion.
That's true.
Your religion can go out to be twice a month to go out and howl at the moon. And that's your primary liturgy is to go make noise at the moon. And nobody in this country can tell you not to do it.
I have a neighbor that was like that a long time ago. Yeah, she would just go outside and start screaming how thought something was wrong.
Well, I don't know whether she started a church.
I hope
When she
not, because
goes
I
outside
don't
and
think
starts
nobody
yelling.
would go there. They'd get spooked out and run out the door. I would be like, I don't know what's the matter here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, taking that into account, anybody can declare that, well, you want to be a reverend? You can get a certificate quite easily. What's it costing now? About 20 bucks, 25 bucks online. And then you can go out and you can perform weddings, you know. And it's very interesting, you know, the Koreans, the monks don't typically perform weddings. Matter of fact, with the exception of America, monks don't normally perform weddings.
I have a question. Have you ever seen somebody do that?
Do what?
The monk marry somebody?
I've married many people.
Oh, you're allowed to do that. I just didn't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, this really isn't question and answer, but if you want to do question and answer, you can come have noodles with us afterwards. Yeah, I sort of have a semi-prepared talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're curious. Come and have a few noodles with us and ask questions, and I'll give you all the answers you could want.
Okay.
So, it was an interesting situation that existed. It's going to be even more interesting. I have no idea whether these people ever listen to my talks. They're up on YouTube. He puts them up.
Yeah, the YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, and you can go on YouTube and type in Roshi and you'll see me. You can type in Desert Zen Center. That's where they're all going now, the Desert Zen Center. But I don't know if these people ever listen to the talk. But to get back to where I was going, I said to them when they came out, and I had to introduce them to this tradition we have. And our tradition is what is commonly called a Zen tradition, which is a Japanese word, by the way. In Vietnam, it's Thien. It's very close. And it means meditation. So we are the meditation school of Buddhism. We are not mutually exclusive. In other words, there are many different denominations or schools of Buddhism, not like the Protestants, nothing. We don't have 300 different schools, but we have a number of different schools, but we all have common practices. We all meditate, even though you belong to a tradition that's not the meditation tradition, so meditation takes place. We all chant. We all recognize the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. In the Theravada tradition, they only recognize one Buddha, the historical Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama lived 600 years ago. In the Mahayana tradition, which is what we're part of, we recognize many Buddhas have lived in the past and will live in the future, and you have the potential to be one of those Buddhas. That's our difference. That really is our difference. The rules the monks have to follow are the same rules. But there is the concept of everybody has Buddha nature, everybody can wake up, everybody can be a Buddha. That's the Mahayana school. And Japan follows the Mahayana tradition. Tibet follows the Mahayana tradition. China and Vietnam and Mongolia and Malaysia follow this Mahayana tradition. So when they were here, I had to kind of introduce them to the Vietnamese tradition. Now, what was interesting about the group of people that were gathered, and I don't want to get into why they were all different, I won't be able to say what I want to say in the amount of time I've allotted myself. There were people that had trained in the Korean tradition. There were people that kind of sort of trained in the Chinese tradition. At least that was their claim. There were people that trained in the Japanese tradition. There was no one that had trained in the Vietnamese tradition. And they came to train with me. They asked to be my student, formally to be my student. And I gave those people novice ordination. We have 2 levels of ordination. You're a novice, which is just exactly what it sounds like. You don't know nothing. And I tell people, while you're a novice, your job is to know nothing. To forget all the presumptive ideas that you have beforehand. You may have read a lot of books on Zen, or a lot of books on Buddhism. Just throw all that away. Because the practice now is to be a monk. It's not to sit around and argue about, well, does karma exist or does karma not exist? Does rebirth exist? Does it not exist? Was the Buddha really a historical figure? No, the job of a novice is not to argue. Matter of fact, if anything, the job of a novice is to learn how to stop arguing. That doesn't mean people don't have opinions. It's like politics. The last few Sundays, I brought this up. Monks, and I had to tell one monk here, you should not be an advocate for any political person. That's not a monk's job. A monk should spend more time listening than talking. You can have an opinion. You're an American. Go vote. I've already voted, by the way. Yeah, I've already voted and it got mailed in. Because I've been doing absentee ballot for a long time. It's a lot easier than trying to figure out where in this valley I get to go vote at. I've voted every election since I got out of the service in 1966. I'm a big believer in voting. I get to complain. I was told by my uncle, if you don't vote, you don't get to complain. You didn't care enough to go give your opinion, so just be quiet. But boy, if I vote and he doesn't or she doesn't do what they said they were going to do, I can complain all day long. So I had to tell this one monk, I said, politics is not your business. Suffering, discontent, unhappiness, malice, those are your business. Your business is to help people, to guide people through their suffering in life, their agony in life, their discontent in life, their unhappiness. That's a monk's job. And the only way that you can guide anybody is if you first take care of yourself. And if you're unhappy, please don't think that you're qualified to tell somebody else how to be happy. First you have to take care of yourself, and that's what being a novice is all about, is learning to be quiet, pay attention, listen. Now we have things they have to pay attention to, and one of them is ceremony. This is, with the exception of an ordination ceremony, what we did today is the longest ceremony we ever do. Right, guys? Mm-hmm. This is the long one. Twice a month the Buddha said, you're human. Because you're human, you're going to break the rules. Now, the most important rules are the ones we recited today. They're very, very important. In the Vietnamese tradition, I don't know of any other tradition that does this. And when I say things like this, I know that somebody might actually, we get 50, 60 people that listen to my talks. Ooh. I am told by a young lady that really entertaining people on YouTube get 15 to 20,000 hits. Yeah, but yeah, we get 40, 50, 60, because when you go on there, it shows you how many people did it. And I think, well, there's 40 or 50 people that are bored, don't have anything to do, so they'll go listen to me talk. In the Vietnamese tradition, the people do not know the rules the monks follow. They're forbidden to doing that. It's such a strong cultural issue that if a teacher finds out that a person who's saying, I want to be a monk, has studied the rules that the monk has to follow, they won't ordain him. This is what my master told me. Now I want you to think about that. I don't know that I completely have my head wrapped around that now. If you're going to ordain and become a monk, but you don't know what the rules are, why would you do that? Isn't that like just, walking out a door in the pitch dark and not sure what's on the other side of the door? There could be a pit to fall in, there could be a tiger to eat you, right? It's just a total unknown. I've never heard anybody complain about it, but it really is. It's a total unknown. You're going to ordain as a monk, and then we'll tell you what the rules are. I never thought about it, because a monk is what you see. This is a really good monk over here. If you come to know him and admire him, you probably want to become a monk because you come to know him and admire him. Not because of the rules you have to follow, right? It's just, if you decide that you want to be an athlete, maybe you want to be a basketball player. I don't follow professional or college sports, but there was a fella, he passed away, he was a coach, and I guess he was very extraordinary, and he was a coach of the basketball team of one of the, like UCLA or USC or something like that. And he was a very moral man. He made his students do all their schoolwork and all of that. They had to be moral and upright and everything. But when you go to study with a coach, the coach says things to you like, no, you need to breathe this way, right? Any of you that have done any kind of sports, or you need to lean this way, or you need to sit up straight, or you need to stretch before you begin. Think what coaches do. If you've had any exposure at all, you need to go. I ran cross country. It was the only sport I did in high school. And we went out and we ran, what did they call them? Something like wind laps. We'd run a 220 as fast as we could, then we'd walk a 220 and we'd run. And we did that for like a week. Wind sprints. Nobody said, why do we have to do this? Everybody went out there and they did it. And then he had another technique, and we did that technique. When I was running cross country back in the early 60s, people breathed with their chest. That's the way adults breathe, right? This big man here, he breathes in, this big old chest expands, and he walks around holding his breath so you can see how big his chest is. Now I have to exhale. And now you know how cross-country drive. By the way, all the records for running have been broken in big ways in the last 20, 30 years. People don't breathe the same. They breathe with their belly. Distance runners now breathe with their belly. And they can go longer and faster. And nobody knew that when I was running. How do we breathe when we meditate? you should be breathing with your belly. You get nice full breaths when you do that. When you're breathing with your chest, you're not getting a full lung full of air. Even though you think you are, you're not getting a full lung. That's what a coach is for. A coach comes along and says, no, you've got to change the way you're breathing. You have to make yourself breathe with your belly because you've got a muscle called a diaphragm. So I want you to think about that. These people, they do it on a regular basis. They become monks and they don't know any of the rules. Now the rules for a novice are pretty simple. I mean, 250 rules. Who's got those memorized? Not me. Theravadins, some of the Theravada monks, they memorize those because when they do an ordination, they don't have a document. I always try to invite Theravada monks here when we ordain, give full ordination to people. And I remember the first time I had Theravadins here and we had a script. And we used the script for the ordination, so because it has to be done correctly. And when we were done, I had invited 3 Theravada monks. Ideally, you would have 10 monks there. We had more. And they came up and said, that's really nice. We like what you do. You have it all printed out. We have to memorize it. And it's such an issue that there is a monk, and usually the oldest guy there. He listens to make sure that exactly the same ceremony is done. The other day I mentioned the fact, I don't remember who corrected me, you don't have to tell me, but I was privileged years ago to go to the ordination of a Catholic bishop. I was involved with an interfaith council up here in the high desert. And I was involved with it the first 10 or 11 years that it existed. And so I think because I was the chairman, I was invited. Or maybe because I was a Buddhist. And I got to sit right there. I mean, I was right there where this priest who was being made a bishop was. And the cardinal was there from LA. And I came back and I told everybody, I said, I feel really good. Because there was a priest standing there with a 3-ring binder. And he had it open like this. I don't have a 3-ring binder. He stood there like this, and the cardinal read off of the 3-ring binder as he did the ceremony. Oh, I know why he read. Because if you don't do the ceremony correctly, the guy's not really a bishop. Oh. That's the way ceremonies work. You know, particularly empowering ceremonies. And someone immediately corrected me and said, no, that's not the reason why they did that. The reason why they did that is because Cardinal Mahoney didn't do ceremonies much anymore. And because I try not to argue any more than I do, I just I said, well, you know, oh no, you know, he didn't do ceremonies much. He was involved. And I thought, why isn't the connection made between you have to do it correctly and you don't do it much anymore, so you better make sure that you do it correctly. Get where I'm going? And I just said, okay, all right. But, you know, why do priests have cardinals? Why did they have altar cards? So they do it correctly. Do you know that they have cards up there? I made us some altar cards here. I just thought it was a fun idea to have that stuff there. Bought a laminator is what I did. Ran them off. So I got these people together, and they were in all these different traditions, and they knew nothing about the tradition we had. And at the time, there was something I didn't really realize, and I realize it very much now, is that probably 95%, I'm going to give a 5% waffle, 95% of the Zen centers in America never teach Buddhism. They don't teach the Four Noble Truths, they don't teach the Eightfold Path. They don't even teach the precepts that the Buddha gave. They teach precepts that the Japanese made up. They're not even the Bodhisattva precepts. They call them Bodhisattva precepts, but that's not what they are. I've taken the Bodhisattva precepts. There's 58 of them. There's not 16. They really redesigned everything to fit what they're doing. And they stopped teaching Buddhism. I used to think it was because everybody in Japan already understood Buddhism. See, I was first in the Japanese tradition. That's what I ordained in. And I thought, well, it's only because everybody in Japan understands Buddhism. They already know the stories of the Buddhist life. They already know the rules that have to be followed. So they don't talk about them in Zen. No, that's not true at all. Most of the people in Japan haven't got a clue what Buddhism is about. They have Buddhist practices that they do, but they don't understand the heart of Buddhism. The heart of Buddhism is not to take life. This is a real simple thing. It's called ahimsa, do no harm. And in the Buddhist time, there were two groups that followed ahimsa. There was the Buddhist, and if Wanji Dharma was here, he's hunkering down, hiding from the COVID.
Is he here, the Jains?
Yeah, the Jains. Yeah, he would immediately say in the Jains, because he's quite a scholar, lives in Apple Valley. Came up here so he could be close to us and me, and then the virus hit. You remember the big guy that was staying here for a while? Yeah, he got an apartment in Apple Valley, and as soon as the pandemic's over with, we'll see him at least every Sunday, and probably for every retreat. And he originally trained in the Korean tradition. So one of the things I told people when we got together is that ceremonies, I gave them a copy of every ceremony we do, all translated into English, because I really saw no reason why they should be in Japanese or Korean or Chinese or Vietnamese. I just didn't see any reason for them to be that way. And so over the years, my master, when he was alive, and we did translating. Later on, I struggled through this process of finding translations. And I gave him a copy of it on a disc. And I said, here's the liturgy that we use here throughout the year. And if you have something that you do from the tradition you trained in, then that's fine. You can use that if you want to. I'm not telling you you have to do everything the way the Vietnamese tradition does it. But if you do not do a ceremony, here's the ceremony you should be doing. I have since found out as the years pass that most of them aren't doing any ceremonies at all. See, what they heard was you get to do whatever you want to do. What I said was, here is a copy of all the ceremonies you should be doing as Buddhist monks, or if you want to call yourself a priest. I've glommed onto the term Buddhist clergy now. I have a student who's decided he's going to ordain people Buddhist ministers. I had to ask him probably 10 times, what does that mean? What is a Buddhist minister? What are the rules, right? And finally he came back. He took a simplified rule that I wrote out for people so they could follow the path, and he made some changes in it and said, well, this is what they follow. Okay. All right. I'm not sure that I'm all for this Buddhist minister thing, but okay, all right. Let's see how it works. You know, I'm for experimenting. This is America. We can try something new. Nobody can tell you you're wrong. Now, all the monks can tell you you're wrong, but the government can't. So he's got Buddhist ministers running around. They got long hair. They got beards all over the place. They don't wear robes. They don't have to follow a rule, except for the rule that's in there. You know. So the issue that came up was rebirth, reincarnation. Now, I've taught many times that reincarnation, which I've talked about before, see, that all of that stuff that I talked about beforehand was the filler, because you've already heard me talk about reincarnation. So I had to kill time here so the talk was long enough. Can you imagine the frustrated people watching YouTube right now? Who go, oh God, I wasted all this time watching it. I told him that reincarnation, as it was practiced in India, eventually became an excuse for the caste system. And take that for what it's worth. Right now, people are all up and set in our country, once again, because black people are not treated identically to white people, and brown people are not treated identically to white people. And so everybody's upset. And the word systemic, I understand the word systemic because I used to use a systemic fertilizer on my plants. So I kind of understand that. But we now have systemic racism. The state of California has decided that they're going to pay reparations for racism, even though California was not even a state during the Civil War. They did not fight in the Civil War, the state. They had no position. They were a territory. They were neutral. They certainly weren't a slave state, but now they're talking about reparations. Because if you've heard about it, maybe you're as confused as I am. If you haven't heard about it, it's worth looking into. Because our governor has decided this is a good deal. I'd rather take that money and put it in the schools, to tell you the truth. I think all of that's a big waste of time. But that's the way it is. Do people treat people differently because they look differently, act differently, speak differently? Yes, they do, all over the world. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Is it good? No, it's not good. Who can make a change? You. That's what the Buddha taught. You can make the change. Your actions are what determines how things happen. And making the change is not getting mad at somebody and yelling at them and throwing bricks through their store windows. That doesn't make the change. Make the change is how you treat people. The Buddha was very clear on this. The caste system existed in India at the time. Walking down the road one day, there was a untouchable. Untouchables in India even today are outside the caste system. They are so filthy that they're not even part of it. You know, the caste system starts off with Brahmins, who are the priests, and then you have warriors, which, by the way, that was the caste of the Buddha. He was a warrior caste, because they're usually the Rajas and the kings and the princes. And then there's the merchants, and then there's the farmers. And then there's the outcasts who go and collect human waste that's thrown out into the street every day. And they collect it up and take it out of the city, hopefully. And that's part of why they're untouchables. But they're also dark-skinned. And the Buddha's answer to the untouchable question and to the caste system was to meet an untouchable walking down the road who immediately stepped off the road so that he wouldn't contaminate. You have to understand, even today in India, if an untouchable looks at your food, you have to take it to a Brahmin to be purified because it is foul. You can't eat it. If he looks at the water you're going to drink, or she looks at the water you're going to drink, you have to have it purified. It's just looking is foul. You don't have to touch it. Mrs. Gandhi, the wife of Mohandas Gandhi, who we know as the great soul, that's what Mahatma means, had one argument with her husband in all the years they were married. And they were married from life. He was like 12 and she was like 11 when they got married. Oh yeah. And in his autobiography, Gandhi talks about going out and telling his wife who she could play